dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the...
Do we participate in a politics of cynicism, or do we participate in a politics of hope?
You can't be a world changer without being a changed man. Only changed people can change their world.
It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does.
All right, good day. Welcome to another exciting package of the Leadership Breakfast, a show that builds leadership capacity for young people by sharing experiences with people who have been in the room where it all happens. Today, I have a very cerebral mind with me. I first came across him at the 7th Assembly as an aide to one of his colleagues, Congressman Bimbo Daramola. He's a man who has seen all the facets of governance from the local to the federal level. But at the time, he was representing the good people of Rivers State at the National Assembly. He has gone on to be the governorship candidate of his party, the All Progressive Congress in Rivers State, and later the MDCO of NIMASA, which he just left recently. Honorable Dakuku Peterside, you recently clocked the golden age. Congratulations for that as well, first.
Thank you very much.
And good to have you on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, you wrote a book that you launched on leadership and strategy. Let's start from there. What informed you wanting to address leadership and especially strategy?
Well, I like to start this way. A great writer, Chinua Achebe, said in his book, The Trouble of Nigeria, that everything rises and falls on leadership. That position has been accepted by many as the challenge of organizations,
Right.
challenge of countries, nations, and even individuals. But leadership matters. Leadership indeed defines how far you can go and what you can accomplish.
Right.
And leadership is not the same thing as managerial capacity.
Right.
Not all managers are leaders, and leaders are not necessarily managers. Leadership speaks to the fact that you've got the vision and you've got the influence to mobilize people to accomplish that vision. And today, in our country, if there's any challenge we have, is the fact that we have the challenge of leadership.
Right.
And so what the book Strategic Turnaround sought to do is to document the transformational leadership experiences we gathered from the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency and use it as a case study on what can happen to other institutions of government if we are determined, if we're focused, if we take it as a project. So there are 5 key reasons why we wrote the book Strategic Turnaround.
Right.
Reason number 1 is to show that any public institution, no matter how badly managed, can be transformed if there is focus, visionary, and determined leadership.
Right.
Clear case number 1. Number 2 is to share our experience of what worked and what did not work in course of transforming public sector institutions. Public sector institutions are unique in many ways.
Right.
They're not like private firms, they're not like public quoted companies. You know, their impact is far and wide,
Right.
but they have a different culture, they have different metrics, and they have different operating model, completely different from what obtains in the private sector. So reason number 2 is to show that any public sector organization can be transformed. Reason number 3 is to document the processes, systems we put in place, so that other people can look at it, do further research on it, replicate it, adapt it. We actually created what is called the NIMASA model of change management out of our own experience. You know, we passed through a lot, but in course of solving what was a very challenging task for us, we discovered a number of things that works in the public sector and what just cannot work. So with that model, other persons can adopt and adapt the model and see what works for them and what will not work for them. Then the other thing is for posterity's sake. We needed to record our accomplishments, our challenges, our difficulties for posterity's sake. There were a lot of things we wanted to accomplish we could not accomplish. And there were reasons why we couldn't accomplish them. So we shared those reasons in the book. We set out to do this, but we could not accomplish it. These are our obstacles. So that other people will learn from our own experience. They won't go through the same route we went through. They will do things differently. So recording things for posterity, there are things we accomplished, we did very well. So let other people also learn from what worked for us. You know, and there are things that we couldn't just complete. Right. You know, peculiar challenges we face. So we'll record all of that for posterity's sake, so that those who will come after us will know where the pitfalls are, they will know where the banana peels are, they will know what worked and what did not work. That's another reason why we recorded it. But above all, we recorded it to show the practical application of leadership and management principles. Now, when you get into the classroom, you're taught a lot of leadership principles. You're taught about the culture of influence. Right. You're taught about culture. You're taught about the alignment between strategy and vision, between organizational culture and strategy. All of those things, you know, principles of change management, different theoretical things, different principles. What we shared in the book Strategic Around is the practical application of some of these leadership principles, how it worked in actual practice, and how some just cannot work in real life situation. Right. And finally, we shared our experience about what happens in third world countries. You know, the public sector in third world country is different from public sector in first world countries or in developed countries that I prefer to call developed countries and developing countries. Here, systems are not strong. Bureaucracy can bring down the best of ideas. You know, can bring down the best of vision, initiatives. It can crash the best of initiatives. You know, a lot of bureaucracy. Then the fact that there are multiple interests. So if you're managing stakeholders, you're not just managing a set of stakeholders, you're managing multiple interests, some unsaid, some said, some evident, some not evident. But you're going to manage all of those things if you want to be a good leader. So for a good leader in third world country, it casts a vision, know that there are bombs, there are challenges, there are storms. If you acknowledge all of those early, you begin to plan for it, you develop resilience. So when these challenges come, when these obstacles come, you anticipated them. You know, you begin to overcome them one after the other, looking at the different possible scenarios. So from point one that you cast a vision, you know that there are different scenarios that could play out. You know, scenario one, all things go well. Scenario two, no, things don't go well. Scenario three, well, some go, some doesn't. So you plan for the different scenarios and how you will overcome at every point until you accomplish the vision. You know, here is an area where the environment is chaotic. We have prolonged crisis or chaotic environment. Things that work in other places will not necessarily work that way here. Technology is still developing, infrastructure is absent. The regulatory regime is very challenging. Rules change, market rules change, rules of engagement change. The rules change like, you know, like the waters, you know. So things change. So things that work in other places will not necessarily work here. So the way you practice leadership in other places is not the way you practice leadership here. Because we're literally speaking, we're in a situation of permanent chaos, permanent crisis. You know, in most developing countries, there is some stability. So you can say that in the next 1 or 2 years, oh, I can plan. But here, you have both long-term plan and short-term plan. So you do your long-term plan, things change, you keep changing your plans, adjusting your plans, you know, to the realities. You know, so that's what the book set out to accomplish.
I'll come back to the book, specifically because of your stewardship at NIMASA, and of course where people can get the book. But let's go back to the basics. Now, a lot of young people going by recent developments in the country, have decided to take a shot at governance, politics, and all that. Although for a very long time, our organization has been saying young people should get involved, especially in the three most critical processes: the political, the electoral, and the governance process. So if you're not interested in one, say for instance you don't want to do politics, at least you can vote, or at least you can engage your leaders when they are elected. Now, but where I'm going is, you started from a very, very young age, and from right there at the grassroots. Today you see someone who just has maybe 5 million or something, says he wants to be president. He wants to start way from the top. Share with us your experiences, starting small, and lessons you learned along the way that took you to the next level, and to the next level, and to the next level.
Well, I started as a student union leader.
Right.
Left the university. Then after some time got involved in politics of the outside world. Then became a local government chairman, different times, special assistant to the governor, special advisor to the governor, became a cabinet commissioner, then became a member of the House of Reps, then ran for governorship of my home state, because ended up being chief executive of the maritime regulator of the country, NIMASA. I learned 3 important lessons.
Right.
1, try and identify your purpose.
Right.
And what are you passionate about? That's the second thing. Try and identify your purpose. And have a clear vision of what you want to accomplish. As a young person, I always had a burning desire to make a difference in society, to make impact. And so my passion was to transform society, or is still to transform society. And the most veritable platform to transform society is a platform of politics.
Right.
Its impact is far-reaching. If you're successful in business, the chances is that your area of impact will be narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're governor of a state, you will impact 5 million, 6 million, 3 million, whatever is the population of your state. In addition, you'll be a role model to a lot of people. So your impact is beyond your state. So people should not just look at the fact that you're impacting the people of your state. A lot of people will leverage on your leadership. Young people around the country, around the world, will leverage on your leadership. They want to be like you. They are inspired by your leadership. And so, the impact is broad, far-reaching. The first thing I've said, try and discover your purpose. And your purpose is connected to your vision. Right. And the second thing is, try and find out your passion. What is it that you're passionate about? Your passion is linked to your vision and is linked to your purpose. Then the third thing I found out is the power of hard work and network.
Hard work
and network. Now, if you've got the right vision and you're passionate and you're not ready to work hard, I am sorry, you're not going to succeed. You won't go far. If you're hardworking and you've not made effort to cultivate relationship with people, and that's the power of network, you won't still go far. And so there's the issue of vision, there's the issue of hard work, there's the issue of passion. In addition, in politics, you need relationships at different levels. Relationship horizontally, relationship vertically. Relationship with those who are under you, under your sphere of influence, your peers, those above you, the support system you need, left, right, and center. You need the power of hard work, the power of network. Many people think that politics is for lazy people. No, I disagree. If you're not hardworking, then you may not just go too far. Every other success you accomplish will be ephemeral, not sustainable. But if you're hardworking, it requires a lot of work. It requires that you're going to maintain a balance among different contending issues. Balance in terms of generating ideas that will change society.
Right.
Balance in terms of having a relationship with multiple stakeholders. Society makes a lot of demand on you. You know, you need to, the way you conduct yourself sends a message about who you are. Now, the issue of trust, the issue of, you know, having the capability and capacity to tell somebody no and be firm, and yet the person won't be hurt. It's a relationship thing. It's managing personal relationship, interpersonal relationship. It's key in politics. Then politics is for long term. Those who think it's a sprint will always get it wrong. But those who understand that you must have an ongoing relationship with people, you must understand their pains, their aspirations, what actually matters to them, what really matters to them. Those are the people who will be successful in politics. All the other ones may attain a position and they will fade away. Right. And so people keep misunderstanding a lot of things. Politicians are not all those who occupy position, and all politicians will not occupy positions.
Right.
But there are those who have ideas, want society to buy into their ideas because they believe that their ideas can transform society. And so they will push for power. They may not be the person at the front line implementing those ideas, but they will have sold those ideas to a group, and the group says, okay, we'll put our best foot forward, you know, so that we'll get hold of power and transform society based on our ideas. Now, some politicians, they are pro-market. They believe that, listen, if the market is working very well, efficiently and effectively, look, it can provide employment for people, it will create wealth and transform society. You know, with that wealth, we will build infrastructure. There are those who believe that, listen, let the state play more active role than the market.
Right.
Oh, the state, listen, everybody work for the state. As you work for the state provides for everybody, ensure that everybody is catered for. Oh, your healthcare, your education, your welfare, the state caters for everybody. So, set of ideas. There are those who are liberal, who say, well, the state, you play some role, market play some role. Let there be a role for market, let there be a role. Then let's coordinate.
Right.
They are called the liberals. So people come with different ideas. Listen, healthcare, what's our best idea of how to solve the problem of healthcare? Ensure that everybody's got access to healthcare, quality healthcare,
right,
and that healthcare is working for everybody. What's our idea of education? What do we want to do with education? Where do we want to see our educational system in the next 10 years, 20 years? Oh, how do we put it in place? We need to get hold of power. Right. These are our ideas. Listen, education is changing. You know, those days where they put in the confines of a classroom, right, it's gone, and we'll never go there again.
You can learn remotely.
So, you know, the political space is a place where there's contest of ideas. You should be able to communicate your ideas. So young people who want to get involved, I encourage them. They've got the energy. Very often they've got intellect, they've got ideas, they're problem with ideas, they've got clear dream of what this one society will look like. But man, there's got to be a prize. A prize in hard work, a prize in relationship, a prize in sacrifice. There's certainly going to be a prize. They've got a lot of energy, probably with a lot of energy. I encourage them. The future belongs to them. This whole thing is about young people. It's about young people. If you look at our peculiar case in Nigeria, where 65% of the population are below the age of 50, oh my God. So, if politics is a game of majority, listen, 65% are already below the age of 50. They should take charge of government. Not the older people. They've lived the best part of their life. They've moved on. They can remember yesterday with nostalgia, not about tomorrow. But it's about tomorrow. It's not about yesterday. There's nothing we can do about yesterday. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our best foot forward. We can make a difference. We can change society. In our generation, Nigeria can become a first world country. It's doable. Singapore did it in less than 30 years. They moved from a third world country to a first world country. United Arab Emirates did it in less than 20 years. They moved from a third world country to a first world country. Who says we cannot do it? With the right leadership, we can do it.
I am going to come back to your last thoughts, but let me go to something important that you mentioned: hard work network. So a lot of young people these days don't want to get mentored. Part of the process of building networks is also submitting to mentoring. You've been privileged to work under several people and getting mentored by them, learning from them. What's the best takeaway for the mentoring process that you have learned, and what would you advise a young person out there who thinks, mentoring is just overrated?
Mentoring is not overrated, so let me be very clear about that. Mentoring is very important, not just in politics, not just in governance, not just in leadership or in management. You understand? Even in family life or marriage, in religious life, in career, in professions, it's important. What I've realized is that there's so much to learn from a mentor if you understand what mentoring is all about. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just about the good part of the mentor. You're also going to learn from his pains, his disappointments, the things he didn't do well. Not only what he shares with you, even the things he refused to share. By observation, you notice. And don't let those things happen to you first before you learn your lessons. Learn from what happened to others. Studying a mentor, you may have observed, or you may observe things he didn't do well, and you choose not to go that path. Right. Things that didn't work for him. You must also listen to his values and how those values align with today's reality or today's world. Values is important beyond vision. The other thing that is important is values. Values are abiding. Now, for some mentors, there are things they will never compromise on. Gentleman, lady, what are those values you will never compromise on? If you don't have such values, then you've not started. If you can't say to yourself, you see on this, I cannot compromise on this value system. It's key if you want to succeed in life. You should be known for something. You should stand for something. You should be ready to die for something. So it's not overrated. In business, I have mentors. Those, if I've got business ideas, I will share it with them, sound them out, hear from them, get the best counsel from them. And underline the word counsel. They're not going to do those things for you. It's counsel. They will guide you. On the field, you have your own experience, your ability to adapt based on the counsel you've gotten. I have a clear mentor in politics. And I'm proud to say that. I've worked under the mentor and with the mentor for like 30 years.
Wow.
30 years. That's a long time.
Very long.
Now, in my spiritual life, I have a mentor. Somebody I look up to. Somebody, if I have issues, I consult with him. We'll talk about it. He shares his own ideas with me, and we agree on the way forward. So in intellectual work, or academic work rather, I've got a mentor. And so, even in my recent adventure in being a columnist, I have two mentors, not even one.
Right.
So I talk to them every week. Oh, I like to talk about this. I like to comment on this. What do you think? These are my ideas. These are my ideas. And of course, they will share ideas with me. Then I sit down and put pen on paper. So it is very important for long-term growth, or for growth. I won't say long-term, for growth. If you want to fizzle out, fade away, then you don't need one. You just take your plunge. If it turns out good, go. If it doesn't, go. But then, whether it turns out good, it doesn't turn out good, it's not going to be sustainable. I'm afraid it's not going to be sustainable. So we all need mentors. We do need mentors.
All right. 2023 is approaching, what kinds of conversation should young people have about the direction of the country, right from the lower levels to, yes, the press? I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of power rests in the presidency. I know a lot of people have been talking about the evolution of powers and all of that, but what kinds of conversations should young people be having as regards the kinds of leaders that we want to emerge?
Kind of leaders?
Yes.
Now, the conversation should revolve around three things: vision, character, competence, ideas. One, what's the vision of this candidate about our country? Does he have a vision? Or is he just running because he wants to run for presidency or for governor? Is he competent? What's his track record? If he has not accomplished anything anywhere, whether in the private sector or the public sector, then I'm afraid he's going to learn on the job. And the Nigerian people will pay a price for getting a neophyte to learn on the job. In the learning process, unfortunately, we are at the stage of the country now we don't need a learner to be on the job. We need somebody who's got some degree of competence and confidence to be on the job. So let the conversation be about competence. What has this guy done before? What has he accomplished? What's his track record? What is the antecedent? Then it should be about character. Thank God for the social media. We could track somebody's character over time.
Okay. Mm.
If it's not been consistent, you also know. Let's begin to now question people's character. Let's begin to look out for men and women that have exhibited the right value system over time. And the way it works, you can't hide your true character for too long.
Mm.
You don't need high degree of adversity for your character to come out. With observation, people will know the kind of person you are.
Yeah.
Let's watch out for character. I've talked about competence. I've talked about character. Then ideas. You might have big vision, but you're not an execution person. Now, that vision, if you don't have the finer details, it's not enough that you have a vision, then you will succeed. No.
Mm.
You should have an idea of how to translate that vision to tangible results. If a candidate comes and says, listen, I can turn Nigeria to Dubai, that's a vision of what he wants to do.
Right.
How?
So show us the working.
Show us details of the plan. Then you now check his background. This is telling you now, does he have the competence to see it through? Does he have the resilience, the staying power to see it through? Has he shown he's got capacity and capability to see it through? It's key. So I think that those should be the conversations. We've suffered for too long as a people. We've suffered disappointment. We've suffered in all dimensions. But this should now be the cut-off time. Let's now look for leaders with character, those who are competent, those with eye for details, those who can deliver, those who are strong in execution, fair-minded. And when we say character, fair-minded is part of it.
Absolutely.
Character traits. Those who are situational, not that they come with a specific mindset. Even when the situation changes, they refuse to change. No, the world is moving at an incredible pace. The way it's spinning, if you're not moving at that pace, then it will throw you aside and just things will continue. No, the world is not going to wait for you.
A lot of people have been talking about the evolution of powers. I have my own thoughts, but the show is not about me, it's always about my guest. I honestly think that if we amend our constitution 1 million times and we don't amend our character, we'll be back to square one. But what are your thoughts on the evolution of powers? We should hand over a lot of powers to state governors, who themselves are, in some cases, emperors anyway. And so there's not so much of checks and balances in the states. But what are your thoughts about devolution of powers? Can Nigeria still work this way if you have the right leader, or we need to devolve?
We need to devolve. That's one. But can Nigeria work this way? It can still work. But it will be better if we devolve power. Now, what matters are two things. One is our institutions. The way institutions are structured, even if you get the best of persons, it might not just work here. But if you have leaders that will strengthen institutions, now create a new culture by strength of his example,
Right.
then these things will work. It's not our constitution. Constitution is a written document. It's got its own limitations. The American constitution is not as voluminous as our constitution. The British people don't even have a constitution. So it's not about constitution. Is constitution important? Yes, clearly so. But beyond the constitution, we need to strengthen our institutions. Then we need men and women of character to run our system. Then we need a new culture. Those are three important things. We need to strengthen our institutions. We need men and women of character and competence to run our system. We need a new culture, not a culture of impunity. A new culture that will promote merit above nepotism and mediocrity. A new culture that will provide that will prefer to support values of integrity, openness, transparency.
Right.
A new culture that will promote effectiveness and efficiency. We need cultural reorientation. But cultural reorientation can only take place when you have competent, capable leaders that have got character. That's the only time we can also strengthen our institutions. And taking you back to the issue of devolution of powers, I said Nigeria can work the way it is if we strengthen our institutions, streamline them, strengthen them, get the right people to run the country. But it will work better if we devolve power. So much power is concentrated at the center that it makes it difficult for them to be as effective and efficient as they should be. But like you said, if we devolve power the way we are now to the states, it is a recipe for disaster. The institutions at the state level are not strong enough. We also need to strengthen the institutions there and get men and women of character to run it. But there's something about taxation, there's something about responsibility that forces a system to adjust and adapt. So if we devolve powers today and say, listen, states, you must generate your own resources,
Right.
generate your own this thing, people will be forced to hold their governments accountable, because now it is about tax money, it's about resources generated from the state. It's not some cake shared at the center, they bring it and they don't care, they don't know how the cake is baked. But when it's baked at the state level, people will ask more questions because they are contributing to the baking of the cake. They can relate with it. Not some oil money gotten from Niger Delta, spent in Sokoto. People cannot relate with it. So they're not going to hold their governors responsible. Because the rest of their message, the government just got money somewhere. But when they are paying their taxes, contributing in terms of being more productive, and they see the government is managing the resources, they won't take it kindly with it.
Let's wind down now and let's come back to NIMASA. Tell us two things that you brought into that system that have made you the proudest as chief executive of NIMASA. That those two things that you look out. I know there are a lot of things that you did, but two things that you feel stand out that you did and that you are proud of, and that any day, anytime you say, I did this, or you with your team anyway, under my leadership, we achieved these two important things at NIMASA.
The first one is reputation.
Right.
And everything rests on reputation.
Yes.
We shot up the reputation of NIMASA in the international community to all-time high. NIMASA is respected globally, respected nationally. Now, if you look back where we are coming from, you understand the enormous damage that was done to the reputation of that organization. People didn't want to touch it, even with long spoon, metaphorically and literally speaking. That's one of the easiest things we fixed. The second one is our culture. And I can tell you the result of fixing the culture. The organization became more efficient and more effective. Our safety records of course, became one of the best. It's not one of the best in West and Central Africa. By the time we fix culture, we're able to, through Cabotage, create employment for 7,000 Nigerians in 1 year.
Wow.
Simply by fixing the culture, and one of the things we fix about culture is metrics. The way we measure outcomes, not just output. All of these things are tied to our culture because we brought a new cultural orientation. We made the organization a learning organization. So every day, people are forced to improve their capacity and their competence on a daily basis. The older ones share knowledge with the younger ones. But every day, everybody is struggling to improve. We brought a new culture of merit-based system. So people get promoted based on merit, not because you're dark or you're fair, you're Fulani or you're a job, or you're Igbo or Yoruba. No. People write standard exams. You're sure that it's merit-based, not where you come from, not where your parents come from. So we brought a new culture. And the other thing we showed is that we value our people. Their welfare, their interest, everything. And it showed on the results we got. It showed on our safety results. It showed on our shipping promotion results. It showed in the fact that we command international respect and local respect. Our ease of doing business index. In all our metrics, turned out to be positive. Simply by doing two important things, like you said. Focusing on reputation, focusing on a new culture that promotes efficiency and effectiveness, that is merit-based, a new culture that is fair, just, a new culture that insists on quality. Not quality, one-off. Quality all the time. Mind you, NIMASA is a regulatory agency.
Talking about building strong institutions. Now let's come to politics. What are you looking at 2023 or let's say in the future? What
I'm looking at
plans do you have?
A united and prosperous Nigeria. And so any theme that is for a united, prosperous Nigeria that can compete with the best of countries in the 21st century, I will join that team, promote that agenda, and ensure we capture power. And the same for Rivers State. I believe that Rivers State can be a model state
What's your relationship with your governor?
He's governor of my state.
I say that because you've also
He belongs to a different political party.
I know. But both of you have come a long way.
Very true.
And I don't think that politics can be the only thing that will divide you. I understand the political metrics of Rivers, but I asked that question because I also know you to be someone who by your cerebral nature is also very mature. So that's why I said, what's your relationship with your governor? I mean, yeah, it could just be at the level of when you meet once in a while. Your Excellency,
yeah. Whenever we meet, we exchange pleasantries. There's nothing personal between both of us. We are all concerned about the good of the state. Our approaches may differ. You understand? Our ideas may be different. But it is what it is.
Do you still want to run for governor?
Good question. 2 years from now, it's a very long time.
Why do politicians say that? Why do you always say that?
Because it's a reality. 2 years is a long time. If you ask me this question next year, perhaps I'm sure I will answer.
I'll hold you to that. Thank you so much, Honorable Dakuko Addo Peterside, for coming on the Leadership Breakfast.
Thank you too.
It's been a wonderful time. I wish you all the best. Like I said, I'll hold you to that. Maybe next year when we have a conversation again, I'll be able to say, you said maybe next year.
I'm available by the grace of God.
All right, that's the show for this week. Thank you so much, guys. See you next week.
Thank you.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the...
Do we participate in a politics of cynicism, or do we participate in a politics of hope?
You can't be a world changer without being a changed man. Only changed people can change their world.
It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does.